So moving right along, the front guards, fenders, I've decided to strip these out as well. I mean, we've gone this far, we may as well continue to do the process. So you'll see there, this is the reason we do it, because traditionally they trap rubbish down between the two panels and we end up with this sort of rust here, and this is where you normally end up with a hole. So people tend to cut that out on the outside, do the repair, and away they go. But you're missing out on getting all the rest of it as well. So quite often, these are very good, but quite often right up in here, you can see in this back corner here, just the amount of crusty stuff in there. And then up the front, a little bit the same. I've already started cleaning these up, but you can see just how much is on the inside of that. And then you can't get right up into here. So strip those out, and this one was the one that had been replaced, so it's not as bad as the other one, but you can see here you've still got that same rusty sort of stuff going on. Now you might see these big panel pillows here. Someone was watching the show and said, you should try some of our panel pillows, so he sent them out to me to give a try, and I'll let you know how that goes. But they're effectively a foam block that goes over the top of your panel stands, and there's his phone number there if you want to check it out. But looks so good, so far so good. First coat of paint stripper, so it's coming off pretty good. A little bit unusual, it's like there's no paint at all in this centre section, and then along up under where the double panel was, it's got like a grey primer that almost feels like a zinc primer or something, which I haven't seen before. But for like half an hour to get to this stage, it's definitely the way to go. And then you'll see here, so if you haven't watched me paint stripping before, the plastic's there just to stop the stripper drying out, so it actually holds all that moisture in rather than letting it dry out. And normally leave it about 20 minutes. You can sort of tell what it's going to do, whether it's going to come off real quick or whether it's got to sit a bit longer. Righto, so there's another 3 hours gone, but I'm really happy with the result. So there's some funny stuff on there, the black lines there, whatever they were, don't seem to want to really come out. But all up in here, it had like a grey stuff under those rusty areas. So there's not much there. And on this one, I've just put the wire wheel on here and the scotchy on there, the strip disc. And this guard, I reckon, was one of the originals. And none of that looked like it had any protection at all on it. And you can see there, I've just had the strip disc on that to give it a quick run over to see what that's going to do, and that'll take all that off, and then I'll use the deoxidine to get the rest of the rust off. So the next stage now is clean all those up, and then I'll go around and weld up all these holes, and I normally reshape that so they don't grab hold of the tyres. So yeah, another job for Howard to do, but all in all, pretty happy with the way that's all coming out. Righto, so we're making a bit of progress on the fenders. So you can see that one over there. I've been on that with the strip disc, and I'm working towards getting rid of all the rust. And I've got Steve here this morning, so he's just gone onto that with the wire wheels and things. And while he's doing that, I've gone on this one, because this one I haven't attacked the inside yet. But I thought while he's doing that, I just marked this out. I like with these this return lip to mark it out, so I use a bit of an old school tool here. It's mainly a woodworking tool, I think, that's got the scribe there. And I've worked out the narrowest point on this return, and now I'm going to run that around and scribe my mark. So to make sure I can see where that's going to go, I'm actually using the texture colour. So I mark that and then I run this around and that gives me a nice line to cut to. So now, once I've got that scribe line on there, I'll grab the 1mm blade now and I'll run that around, and I'm just going to go a little bit wider here where it steps down, because what I'm going to do then is I'm going to use this block that I made a long time ago with this step in it, and I'll put that up from underneath here and I'll roll this edge over onto that block so that with a wider wheel, when the wheels turn under the guard, it doesn't actually want to pull it, because at the moment this sharp edge grabs hold of the tyre and then causes damage. So I'll make that all the same, weld up all the holes, and then we'll get the hammer and dolly going and dolly that over and make a nice radius, so it'll still look stock, but it'll be beneficial with the wider wheel, and it'll also look a lot nicer as well. So I've got all this cleaned up, ready to do the welding. So I'm using TIG, and I'm using the TIG because you get away way better, like the TIG tends to get a better finish in relation to pinholing. So because it's a fusion welding, it makes the whole lot molten and then it becomes like one. So you get a little bit in the back that's going to have to be ground off. But I'm just using a 1mm tungsten on the torch, and then I've got some 1mm filler wire, might be 1.2 this one. And what I'm doing is when I go across the hole, I put my filler rod on and then I apply the spark directly onto the filler rod so it gets hot first, and then I pull it in to fill it up. So I did try it with the copper behind, because I thought, you know, maybe that might work, but which I would do with MIG, but it doesn't work with the TIG so well. So I'll just see if I can get one of these to work nicely for the camera. So you just got to get enough filler rod in to fill it up. Like that. So your filler rod goes in, get it hot, go around with the flame, Bob's your uncle. So I've worked my way around. It's interesting here, where I hammered up that bit of metal, and pretty much pushed metal back into itself. When I've welded this hole up, you can see how the heat now is, the metal's pushed along. So it's just, I find that interesting that when I've hammered that in, obviously it's gone back into shape, but it had pressure on it. So it had tension. So when I've heated it up, that tension's pushed it over and formed that little step, which I find really interesting. So I'll keep going. Righto, so moving on from the welding process, I've gone through now and sanded those off. So I've just used the old 40 grit on the flapper, on the 4-inch, and a little bit of the little merker to get in the back, because I needed to get it nice and flush both sides. So we end up flat like this, and you can sort of see a few little grind marks, but pretty much nothing much to show now. And you can't afford to leave any lumps on the back either, because my plan now is to turn that edge over. So we've pretty much gone from this with all the holes and all in it, and the holes was because it had Fairmont wheel arch moulds on it, which I'm not going to use. And now I've welded those up and flattened it out, cut the back edge nice and even, and now I'm hammering and dollaring that to a round edge. So I'm keeping this factory radius here, but then turning it all the way over so that when I've got my wider tyres, I'm going to run an 8-inch wheel on the front. I don't want my tyres grabbing the sharp edge. So you can see as I go up here where I'm slowly working that way, that around. And what I'm using for that is I ground this dolly up a long time ago. So normally it would be like that. And I've ground that edge into there, and I've done that so that it'll fit up under the back of there. Because if I just use this one, it doesn't enable me to get the edge over and keep that nice round shape. So I'm using primarily that, with a flat hammer this way, and I'll do a little bit of it in a minute. And then I'm using this one here, which we've made just out of a bit of leftover rubbish by the look of it, and a bit of round bar, and I'm putting that up in from the back like that, so that I can hammer down so we get a little high spot like that bit there. And I'm using this hammer, which has got a nice broad crown on it, which enables me to have this on the inside so I can tap that high down and then keep this back edge right. So once I've got the whole thing done, I'll run around the back edge, flatten it up with a file, and then we'll have that nice radius all the way around that hopefully looks factory, but it'll be a whole lot more effective with a wider wheel. It's really handy if you happen to have a shot-filled bag for your panel beating stuff. That can work really good for holding the panel. And at the moment I need just to lay it down a bit. So if I lay it down flat this way, I can lay that in here, and that'll hold it and stop it sliding around. And this is one of those jobs where you've got to keep moving. And at my age, trying to get my back to twist in the right direction is a bit hard. It's like everything, it's slowly bring it over. Don't try and do it all at once. It's another smaller shot bag. Just trying to keep upward pressure on that with this so that I'm not damaging the other side. So it's a little bit tedious, but you can see the result there. We end up with that curved around. And like I say, once I get finished, I'll just tidy up that back edge and then we'll be good to go. Get a bit of primer on it. Got these guards just about ready to go into epoxy, but before I do that, I've just sat it back on here now. It's got no inner frames in it, so I've just got 2 bolts on the top rail and a couple of bits of sponge in the bottom because it's clearly got some dents in it and it had some filler and stuff in that. And I started following it and I thought, you know what, I better get the camera out. So you can run your hand over things and go, yeah, I can feel something there, but I'm not sure. But if you get a file, now you can get a proper panel beater's file, but this is just a normal, this is a mill file, a mill bastard file actually. And I like these, and I often talk about it's just got a single cut, it's not cut both ways. And I use that then, and it'll probably make some horrible noises now, but I like to lay that on the panel. Now you got to remember that the file's pretty much flat, and the panels, so it's flat there, but obviously it's not flat this way. So you got to use that to find the problems, and clearly we have a problem just here. So with a little bit of filing that I did, you can see a couple of spots there. So if we work down the bottom here, now the reason I'm doing this, I'm not file finishing, I'm using the file to help me to find the problems. So now you can see I've got a high all the way around there. So it's obviously had a hit pretty much there. And the reason I want to find the shape of the dent is so that when I come in from the back, I'm going to push it back to where it needs to be in the same position that it went in. So I'm just going to run the file over that, find any problems. So there's another little one here. You can see that one's about the size of a 20-cent piece. And, you know, I can feel that even with a glove on, but it's quite light. But I can get in the back there now, and I'll probably use, you know, the back edge of the dolly to give that a bit of a rub. You might try it now. That's probably the wrong one. I'll just grab a different dolly. You don't always have to hit things. So this is a nice little dolly. It's got a nice round top on it. I can put that in from the back, right on where that low is, and I can see that moving the metal. And all I'm doing is rubbing it, just pushing it. I'm not hitting it. Straight away, my file's got a bit of something on it there. It's now half the size. So you don't have to bang everything. You can. What I find and what I'm led to believe is that when they press a panel like this, and it's under a huge amount of tonnage of pressure to make the shape, the panel, the steel gets like a bit of a memory. So if that dent, when you're trying to get it back out, it wants to go back to the original position. But if it's on a crease like this one, you need to get the crease line up to let the rest of the metal come up. And it will retain some of that memory, provided it's not too badly damaged. So I'm just going to push that a little bit more, and I'll work my way along and find all these little bits and pieces. And this is not a lot different to what your PDR, your paintless dent removal guys do, but rather than using a file to find it, they've got their lights with the lines, and they're just pushing the metal back to where it come from. One, two, three. So the advantage of doing it now without the inner in here is the fact that I can now get in there and panel beat, whereas when the inner, I weld that back in, I wouldn't be able to get to it. So I'll work my way around and I'll find them all, then I've got to fix them all. When planning your project, make sure that you pick a product, a quality product, to go through the whole process. So whether it's your epoxies, your primers, all the way through to your finish, stay with the same brand, and that'll guarantee you, first of all, warranty with that particular company, but also knowing that all of those paints are designed to work together. My choice has been PPG. I've been with them 25 years, and we've been able to produce some of the best paint work in Australia, and my trust is in them to continue to produce the products you need. Now, don't forget, they've got a premium range, a mid-range, which is the Deltron, and then you can go down to something like the Autothane. So PPG's got everything covered. Check them out. They're my choice. They should be yours. Right, so I said last episode that I had some stuff I put in caustic soda. So I've just got a 20-litre bucket, and I put these in there and they didn't quite fit all the way down, but it'll be interesting to see, because my expectation is normally it would just eat it off. So there's so many different products, you can see there's quite a lot of rust sitting under there. So the caustic will take grease and paint, and you can see there the paint's still on there, but here it's not, where it was sitting in there, and this with a bit of a scrub will come off. But it doesn't take rust off, so it only takes the paint. And I don't know what this grey primer is on here, but it's sitting on the inside of the guard, and it's quite solid compared to everything else. It's some sort of primer. You can see there just with my fingernail it comes off. So caustic's not a bad way to go. It's a lot slower than a lot of other chemicals, but it's not a bad way. So it's basically Drano. And if you warm it up, it works quicker. So not too bad a result, I guess, but it's probably, I'm probably more a paint stripper guy than a caustic. So you would have seen these come out of the caustic. So time is always an essence, I guess, and what we've been doing now, this is that grey primer I keep talking about that I haven't seen before. We're just giving them a little bit of paint stripper while we're set up because we've been doing other stuff. So that'll be a quick wipe over and then just a little wire brush or something, and it's only just been on there for a couple of minutes. It'll all come off, and then I'll clean up what's left with the machines, wire wheels and things, and then I'll have all those bits ready to go together to put the guards back together. I guess you got to think about how much time you want to spend on all this stuff, but these here I'd normally send out to get them blasted, but because we've been paint stripping everything, I've just had Steve paint strip those, and there's a little bit of effort in it, but as you can see, it comes out absolutely mint. And what I'm about to do now is just with a strip disc, that's a new one, end up looking like that after you've done a bit of work with them, but I'm just going to use a new one now to take off what's left of the rust. Now, this car, we've been extremely lucky. This part here normally would have a hole in it, and the same on the outside. But fortunately, coming from a dry area, it doesn't have a lot. So I'm just going to clean those up now, and then they'll get some, and the same on this side. I'll put some of that black epoxy on those because all the inside of the guards will be black. We'll use like a stone guard on them, or a like a ute liner type product, and I'll show you that when we do that. But I want to get these all done now and sealed up so I can weld them back in, and we can start getting things back on and keep moving towards the front of the car. We're getting close. Bits and pieces. So I'm just going to put some epoxy on these, some black epoxy, and I'm going to use the black one because they've got to be welded back in, and then all of this on the inside, or the majority of it, will be done in like a stone guard or a bed liner. So I've got a new product that PPG are working on at the moment that hopefully we're going to be able to use. I've used all other stuff in the past, but I'm looking forward to seeing this new one, and I need to get all these back together so that we can put some paint on them. So I'll put some epoxy on them, and then all I've got to do is finish doing the dents on the guards and we'll be good to go. There we go, look like a couple of new old stock panels, all nice and clean. So I've got Steve out doing another job on the rust. So we paint stripped this, and it's pretty good. I mean, on the outside especially, so that's straight off the paint stripper, and there's a little bit of surface rust here and there, and a few little creepy crawlies, but not too bad. On the underside, because the factory doesn't put a lot of paint on, we've actually got this surface rust. Now, the issue was, because we're not sandblasting, we're doing it all here, as if we're doing it at home, was how to do that. So we've just had a bit of a play, and what Steve's been working with is some deoxidine or phosphoric acid, and he's just been using that, and we've gone through a couple of little ideas to try and work that, and what he's been using is just this little spacer that is pretty much the right size to fit in the groove, with some Merca-Abalone, which is Scotch-Brite for want of a better name, and just putting that. So have you got that straight, Steve, or is it?
Yeah, it's diluted.
So it's diluted, so 3 to 1 with water. So we've just been putting that on, and then agitate it with that little block. And now that he's worked that out, that'll probably take, I don't know, half an hour or so to clean up. And the reason we do that is that I don't have anywhere where I can sandblast easily, and makes a whole lot of mess. And I'm trying to do things that you could effectively do in your home garage. And this is working quite well, and we'll go along and clean it up, because you really can't get in there with a machine. You can possibly use the wire wheel on the drill, but then you can't get into the back corners in around here and stuff. So that's working pretty good. And it's just one more piece that I'm trying to get into primer. So you would have seen me panel beating this guard on the car, and because I'm trying to get my arms around, I'm on my own, it's all a bit hard. So I often do this when I'm polishing. So I've got this table, which is all timber, and it's a particle board top, and what I do is I screw some blocks down, just like that, bit of timber, so that I can then Tech screw that to the blocks. So what you end up with, something that's really solid, so that you can get your hands around and work on it. And it's something, if you're on your own, it makes a big difference. So I've just been working up, you know, there's a dent here, one here, big one here, another one in the top. So I've been able to run the file over that, get those up as best I can do without spending a day on it. And what I'm going to do now is, when Steve comes in, I'll get him to give me a hand, because when you put this nose cone on, there's a bit of variation down along this top edge here. And what I'm looking to do is I'll put the shrinker stretcher on this back edge down along here, so that I can reshape the curve on that to match this. So you can get a little bit out of these, but being aluminium, it can be a bit dodgy. So I'm just going to reshape this line to match this panel. And then when we weld that inner back in it, I'll make sure that I double check that everything lines up, so that I can get this piece to fit the guard correctly. So that's sort of my next job with that, and then that's nearly ready. I've just got to knock this edge here under like I showed you the other one. So I'll do that, and then that's that one just about ready for epoxy. Righto, so I've got the other guard now bolted down to the table. You can see here there's a low here, there's an old repair just there, and I've been working away at another old repair just there, and then there's another dent over this side where you can see I've had a little bit of heat on it. Now, it's funny because sometimes I get sent stuff to try and those sorts of things, and the guys from Metal Man Tools, I can get my camera to do what I want it to do. Metal Man Tools sent me a heat shrinking disc. Now, I've never used one of those, but I've read a lot about them, and I decided this might have been a good opportunity, because these ones here, that's the way it come after we paint stripped it. So whoever did it previously decided that was enough of a repair. So I've just sort of put the flipper on it and got a little bit more out of it, but this area here was nearly as bad as that. And what I've done is I've just run the large heat shrinking disc, which is this fella, which is a stainless steel disc. And what it does is it heats the metal up, but obviously anything that's sticking up is going to heat up more, and the stuff that's low is going to heat up less. And then you apply a wet rag. So the highs get hotter, they shrink more, the lows are cold, they don't shrink at all, and it flattens the metal. Now I'm pleasantly surprised with how good this area here has come up with just that one application. So what I'll probably need to do, I'm out here on my own, so I'll probably set the camera up on the old tripod again and do a little bit of that and just show you. And I'm learning as I'm going, but I'm finding that it's quite successful. So you can see here there's a low there. So reading their instructions, it's telling me that I need to make sure that I get those the best I can before I use the pad. So I'll spend a little bit of time now on the dolly and the slapper bar, get them up the best I can, and then we'll try this heat shrinking. Righto, so I've got that camera now up on the tripod, nice and safe. And I'm just going to work in this area. You can see that in the camera. So I've got a nice big low here. I was just fixing one there and I thought, you know what, I'll show you what I'm doing. So I don't know what the right method is with some of this stuff, but I've found that with a big low like that, if I can bang and clang on that for ages, but if I put a bit of heat on that with the oxy, it will expand the metal and it'll want to come up. And then I'll just use the slapper bar around the outer edge of that just to try and get some of that metal to go back where it used to be, and then I'll give it some cool with some air. Now I'm not going to use water on it, because if I use water it'll want to shrink it and quench it. I'm more looking just to cool it gently and try and get it to flatten out, so then I can use the shrinking disc to solve the problem. So I'll get my ear protection on. Now I want a reasonable flame, but not, I can tighten that up and it's howling, that'll actually be too hot. So I just want a gentle flame. That's about how big it is. I'm going to start in the middle and I can see that coming up. I don't know what will show on there. I don't want it red hot. I definitely don't want it bluey. I just want to put a little bit of heat in it. It's a bit high there, a bit low there. Now a slapper bar is a lot better than a hammer because it won't mark the metal as much. Okay, so that's cool to touch. Now I'll run the file back over it. So my file now is touching through here, through there. So it's still a bit low, probably that ridge holding it a bit, so I might just do a little bit more heat there and I'll get my dolly on the underside. Just push that up. I can actually see it moving like that, so I might just try that. So that's made it smaller. Just a tiny bit of heat, doesn't need much at all. Now on the instructions for the shrinking disc, it says to get it the best you can. Now I'm thinking the disc might fix what I've got, but I know I can just get those two bob marks a little bit better. So if I just grab this camera, you can see there, this one here I've left a couple of lows. I'll be interested to see if it takes them out. And then here, it's not too bad. So that was one big low and now I've just got a couple of little ones. So what I'm going to do now is I'll get the shrinker onto that, the disc, and see how it goes. Righto, so here we go. That's just a damp rag, not overly wet, just damp. Oh, feeling pretty good. Just on that one swipe, let's have a look with the file. I feel a little bit maybe I should be using the small one. This one to go on the 4-inch grinder. Tell you what, a little bit hard to see where the file's tucked in there, but it feels really nice. Don't know. I've got another one here. I probably should push this around a bit and then I can do all the way through, because at the moment that's below and I'm sort of feeling this going on. So I might just fix this, because when I put the ruler on it earlier, when I do this, in the middle here I've got nearly 2mm. That ridge is down, so I might give a bit of work to that and then we'll have another go with that disc, but I'm pretty happy with that. You can see all these little dings in there from the pick hammer. So I'm going to try and get this and this up, and this top section here up before we put the disc on it. But I mean, that there has come up quite good. It's not looking too bad, so we've got rid of this big low that was here. I'll just go back to my old school ways now and just push around this ridge here. Feels to me it's a bit full just here and a bit low there. I'll do that manually with my hands, and then we'll just keep moving along the panel as we go. So after a fair bit of work, I've finally got these to a point now I'm ready to put some epoxy on them. So you would have seen me doing all of the panel work and you wouldn't believe it. I ended up knocking one off the stand, put a bloody great dent, so I had to go and fix that again. So it's been a bit drawn out, but I've got to a point now. I'm going to put these in the DP616 epoxy, both sides, and that way I can then start putting the inners back together and line them up with the doors. That pretty much rounds us out for another episode. Don't forget, subscribe to the channel, click the like button. If you've got any questions, ask them and I'll definitely get back to you on those, and look forward to seeing you on the next one.